On the road again. I can't wait to be on the road again. Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan, live from the car, on our way to Kalamazoo, Michigan, from Flint, Michigan, where we've been for, 3 days, 4 days? I forget. About 4 days. We were in Flint, and now we're on our way to Kalamazoo to cover another poisoned community. In the case of Kalamazoo, a multi-billion-dollar packaging company, Graphic Packaging, has a paper mill in Kalamazoo, Michigan that has been releasing toxic gas into the community for many, many years. People are getting sick in a predominantly poor black community, but now the toxic gas is being smelt and felt in the white part of town. So I have covered this from afar, and now we are going to speak with the residents and activists being affected in person. So we will be live again later around 5 o'clock Eastern Time to speak with residents in Kalamazoo about this paper mill that's been poisoning Kalamazoo. Interestingly enough, current governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, and her administration awarded this paper mill, Graphic Packaging, even though they had known about the toxic gas, even though they had been on the receiving end of complaints from residents for years. They approved in 2021 a $125 million bond deal that allowed this poisoner, Graphic Packaging, to expand. So somehow the Democratic governor and her administration thought it would be a great idea to help a paper mill that's poisoning Kalamazoo, help them to expand by approving a $125 billion bond deal. Make it make sense. So anyway, we're on our way. We'll be there in a bit, but I wanted to go live, talk to the masses, talk about Flint, which we just covered the 9-year anniversary of the ongoing, let me repeat, ongoing water crisis. We recorded a few interviews too that we have not released yet, so we will be releasing those as the days and week go on. After Kalamazoo, Louis DeAngelis is headed back to East Palestine next week for us. Poor Colin is doing double duty because Colin is with me right now behind the camera and handling the live stream. So Colin is with me this week in Flint and Kalamazoo, and then Colin is headed to East Palestine to do camera and editing for Louis. So Godspeed, Colin Tooley, doing God's work. But we wanted to talk to you, answer any questions. Please, we need donations. We need super chats. This is incredibly expensive to be on the ground for 2 weeks straight in Flint, and then Kalamazoo, and then East Palestine. So if you got a couple bucks you could donate, either at StatusCoup.com/donate or super chats. We would love both, but if you ask me which one we would prefer, please donate to StatusCoup.com/donate, just because YouTube takes 30% of your super chats. If super chat is easier, by all means, do the super chat. And of course, our first choice, if you're going to do anything, is to sign up as a Status Coup member. We got like 1 or 2 member sign-ups so far while we've been in Flint, but we need to get a lot more to be able to afford these kind of reporting trips. So StatusCoup.com/join, become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. That's StatusCoup.com/join. And yeah, you tell me, Colin, when we have comments, questions, super chats, but until we do, I'll just kind of tell you my feelings and takeaway from our trip just now covering Flint. This was actually, believe it or not, this was my 19th reporting trip in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 7 years. So this is my 19th time that I've reported in Flint since 2016. I have the 2 back surgeries to prove it. I'm getting an MRI Monday, so hopefully not a 3rd back surgery. But, you know, this trip was a little different in Flint. Number one, first and foremost, you know, it's just different when you first cover something 7 years ago that's like in the early stages of a crisis. You know, there's a lot of protesters out, and there's a lot of action, and there's a lot of energy, and there's residents out, you know, fighting the good fight. And you go cover protests where there's 100, 200 people. You go cover city council meetings where it's packed because it's, for many residents, they're just finding out about the water crisis when we first went. So compared to 7 years ago when I first started covering it there to the 9-year anniversary, I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot less people out. And there's people that I have known and become friends with and become close with that have died. One resident that, for those of you watching from Flint, was kind of like a larger-than-life figure in Flint. His name was Tony Palladino. He sadly died last year. So I had dinner with his wife last night and kind of told old stories. But when you come back, and a lot of the people that were some of the, you know, leading activists and residents who were always out there fighting, and sadly have died because of the water. And not just Tony, there's been other residents that every time I came to Flint, I would interview them and check in with them, and they're no longer with us. It is sad, and it is tough, and it's kind of like, almost like a deflated balloon, you know? And there are still people out fighting, so I don't want to make it seem like nothing is happening. The anniversary we covered the other day, you know, there was probably, I don't know, 30 to 50 people there. But I would be lying if I said it's the same energy. And how could it be? You know, if your community was poisoned and it's been 9 years and nothing really has been done, and the water is still contaminated and no one has been put in prison, I can't blame people who no longer come out. And I can't really blame people who need a break and have become jaded and hopeless and don't believe anything will change, so why should I come out to the anniversary event, or why should I continue organizing for justice? So, you know, it definitely was a different kind of trip, but I still learned new stuff. We did an interview yesterday that we recorded, so when we release it, it's fairly scandalous if you ask me. We interviewed a gentleman who was hospitalized 2 years ago with Legionnaires' disease, which was the deadly waterborne bacteria that killed a lot of people in Flint back in 2014, 2015, 2016. And he was hospitalized with Legionnaires in 2021. And he was hospitalized in the summer of 2021, July. And that's generally when Legionnaires, you see a lot more cases of Legionnaires, because the bacteria thrives in hot weather. So you'll see more cases of Legionnaires in summer than you would winter. And generally, Legionnaires, the source for Legionnaires, a lot of times could be in air conditioning units or cooling systems. So this man actually was hospitalized in July 2021 with Legionnaires. They were not using their air conditioning. His wife and him didn't use the air conditioning, even though it was the summer, because they're on disability and they couldn't afford it with their other expenses. So he was taking 3 or 4 showers a day just to cool off. And then he got Legionnaires. So when he was in the hospital, I guess the hospital contacted the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the CDC spoke with the patient, the Flint resident, and the patient explained that the source has to be Flint's water. Still, 2021, so we're talking 2 years ago, which would indicate that there was a conditioner because we're not using the air conditioner. And I was taking 4 showers a day. And the CDC, as soon as this resident basically told him it's coming from the water, CDC basically ended the conversation and never followed up. Which is pretty interesting, because look at what's going on right now in East Palestine. As we've reported, and I've reported, and Lewis is following up on, the CDC in East Palestine is urging doctors and healthcare providers not to test residents of East Palestine for vinyl chloride in their urine. Vinyl chloride is the highly toxic chemical that was part of the control burn, where they say 5 cars of vinyl chloride were basically detonated and exploded into the air. And residents that have been able to get the test, I've already talked to 3 residents who got their urine tested, and their urine levels had elevated levels of vinyl chloride, which causes cancer, particularly liver cancer. And the CDC is telling doctors and nurses not to test for vinyl chloride based on a chemist that I spoke with. Bullshit rationalizations why they're telling doctors and doctors and healthcare providers not to test residents of East Palestine for vinyl chloride. And here you have in Flint, when we know there was the Legionnaires outbreak, the largest Legionnaires outbreak in American history happened in Flint in 2014 and 2015 because of the toxic Flint River water. But basically, I'm going to dig further on this. It seems that this resident got it from Flint City Water in 2021, and once he told the CDC, they wanted nothing to do with it. So it's not just that we're covering the anniversary, we're still learning new information. And I'm also digging on some other things in terms of Flint that I can't really discuss right now. But let's just say this is still, I stand by, this is the biggest government cover-up of the 21st century. Flint, Michigan. The reason I have gone 19 times is because I do not believe that in America people should be poisoned by their government and then that poisoning covered up by the government and then the residents left to slowly and quietly die. And that is what's happening in Flint, Michigan. And I will go 19 times or I'll go 100 times until I die, because the residents, it needs to continue to be covered. It needs to be continued to kept in the news, not as some tragedy that happened a long time ago, but an ongoing crisis. Based on the residents I have spoken with just this week, the water is still contaminated. Residents are still getting rashes. Residents are still losing hair when they shower. Residents tell me that their water smells like sewer. Other residents I spoke with told me little black particles are coming out of their water. I don't know, you tell me, does that sound like safe water almost a decade later? Not to mention the grave injustice that not only is no one in prison, not only has no one even seen a jury trial 9 years later, but for reasons I've explained in other live streams and other interviews, it doesn't look like there is going to be any criminal convictions based on the current Attorney General, Democrat Dana Nessel, and her team's, from what it seems, criminal incompetence. So that's my takeaways from Flint. It is very depressing. Of course, I'm not a resident, but as a journalist, it is very, very depressing and frustrating to have given most of my journalistic career, given a lot of my life, really, to try and break the stories on Flint and continue to keep this in the news and to continue to try to get the rest of the country to care. It's very depressing when time and time again you keep going back and not a lot has changed. But that's where they want us. That's where the government wants the residents. That's where the government wants the few remaining journalists who still give a damn. They want you to give up. They want you to grow cynical and jaded and hopeless and just give up so that they could officially sweep it under the rug. And as far as I am not going to allow it. And to be clear, continually going back to Flint does not make us money. In fact, most of the time when we're in Flint, I think due to YouTube's algorithm suppressing it, most of the time when we're in Flint, I mean, our live streams don't do that well. The videos don't do that well. We don't tend to get a ton of member signups. But when we sneak by the YouTube algorithm and when more people are exposed to our reporting, the first reaction is, wait a minute, I thought that was fixed. I don't see it in the news anymore, so I just assumed that that was fixed. Or wait a minute, I've heard headlines for years that the water is safe again. People are shocked when they realize that it's still a crisis, it's still a disaster, the water's still toxic, no one has been held accountable, the governor's charges were dismissed. So it's hard. I mean, it's not easy journalistically to keep this in the news, to stay on it, to keep going back, even though people I've grown to really care about are dying. I mean, just this trip, I told Colin, 3 or 4 people that I would normally interview and grab a meal with or grab a beer with, they died within the last 2 years. And they grew sick because of the heavy metal poisoning and the bacteria in their water and all the things, cancers and liver problems, and COVID killed them. And maybe if they didn't have a weakened immune system, they could have fought off COVID. Who knows? So that's kind of my takeaway. I'll have more to say on Flint once I'm home and have more time. We release more of the videos and stuff, but that's kind of my feeling. I don't know if there's questions or super chats or you have any feelings.
We do have one super chat so far from Caitlin, $2. As a Michigander, thank you for your coverage.
Thank you, Caitlin. For sure. I mean, it's kind of sad, Caitlin. You tell me, maybe I'm wrong. I don't really see Michigan's own media covering it anymore, aside from like a 20-second headline about, Flint residents got together to commemorate the anniversary of the water crisis. But they're certainly not covering it in demanding answers from the Attorney General's office. They're certainly not covering it talking to residents about the quality of the water. They're certainly not covering it demanding answers on the criminal investigation. So it's kind of sad that it takes an independent outlet that is not based in Michigan to be the only ones covering it. I'm working on a few things on the side and talking to a filmmaker who might be interested in a relatively well-known filmmaker who is trying to sell a documentary based on my reporting, actually, to the larger networks. So hopefully we'll have news on that I'm glad for the people that live in Michigan and outside, at least you're getting some information on what's going on there.
That's the only super chat so far.
Okay.
Trying to see if there was any questions.
Questions, comments, whatever. And by the way, smash the like button if you haven't yet. The like button is right under the video. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this. Share this live stream. Press the share button. Create your own social media post telling people that we're live. YouTube is tricky. Sometimes we sneak through the algorithm and sometimes we don't. So yes, definitely spread this live stream. Like I said, we're on our way to Kalamazoo, so we're going to be live there later on, probably around 5 o'clock Eastern, talking to residents there. They are being poisoned in Kalamazoo, a different form. This is air pollution from toxic gas that is being released into the air. So yeah, Michigan, it's funny, Michigan's slogan is Pure Michigan, but they should change it to Poor Poisoning, because that's really what's going on in Michigan. Whether Flint, Detroit, Kalamazoo, Benton Harbor, so many places in Michigan have environmental contamination, whether it be the water, air, soil. It's really unfortunate.
We have a question from someone named Anat.
Anat, who's that?
Who is this fine-ass journalist, and is he single?
Well, Anat, I recently, my wife recently gave birth to a beautiful young lady, my daughter Lily. This is my first time away from my daughter since she was born. So I do miss my daughter. I miss my wife, who happens to be the person asking the question. I am not single. And other than the people of Flint and my family, my wife and daughter are number one. But I do miss. I showed Colin video of my daughter giggling earlier. So if my wife would let me post more videos and more pictures of my daughter, I would do it on every live stream. But she doesn't let me. So oh well.
Got another super chat from Caitlin for $5. She said, I'm from Kalamazoo County, and I heard about graphic packaging and Flint's ongoing crisis through you.
Thank you, Caitlin. And think about that for a second. Think about that. Caitlin and thank you for the super chat. You live in Kalamazoo County, and you didn't know about this multi-billion-dollar, let me repeat with a B, multi-billion-dollar packaging company that is poisoning a poor black community, and now the toxic gas is now being smelt in the white part of town. You didn't know about it from your local ABC station, your local CBS station, your local NBC station, your local newspaper. Why would that be, Colin? How is it that people who actually live in the towns we're going to cover have no fucking clue what the hell is going on and have to be informed by an independent news outlet rather than their local news? It's almost like there is a giant national cover-up, and our media companies are actually just a bunch of public relations marketers putting on makeup, holding a microphone, and pretending to be journalists. It doesn't make any sense. This is not like a secret, by the way. If you go to where this plant is, you cannot miss it. They are releasing a toxic plume of gas that is going, by my eyes, miles. So it's just crazy to me that the media in Flint don't cover it anymore. They don't give a shit. Kalamazoo don't give a shit. If you turn on CNN, you turn on MSNBC, Fox News, when it's not lying about elections, what are they covering? They have way more resources than we do, but they're covering the 2024 Republican battle for the nomination. It's a year and a half before the election. They're covering who's up, Trump, DeSantis. They're covering, I don't know, Trump's multiple investigations. They're covering Kanye West and, you know, his meltdown a couple months ago. They're covering Ukraine more than they're covering the war on American citizens right here at home. And I'm not saying, by the way, that national news outlets or local news outlets can't cover more than one thing at a time. That's your job. You have to walk and chew gum at the same time. You got to cover multiple things. But the fact that none of them are covering, like, the environmental genocide that's going on, I know why. It's because corporations have bought the media, but that doesn't mean it's right. It is not right.
Got another super chat from Dashbush Fleisch for 5.99 euros or pounds. I don't remember. Euros. In my opinion, privatization of water supply is one of the greatest dangers of capitalism.
You are correct, Dashbush Fleisch. Thank you for the super chat. And by the way, this doesn't get a lot of attention. If you look at Wall Street and, you know, the stocks that are on the rise over the last few years, one of the fastest growing commodities, they call it, is water. Hedge funds in New York are buying up a lot of the water companies in terms of stocks. Why do you think that is? Based on what I could tell, it seems that they're buying up a lot of the water stocks because so much of America's water is being privatized and so much of America's water is being contaminated. And I believe that a lot of Wall Street is buying up privatized water companies, you know, Nestle and a lot of other, they're buying those companies' stocks because they believe at some point in the not too distant future, there might be a shortage of clean water. And I've talked to people that say the next world war will not be over oil, but it will be over water. So, the water privatization, which is, by the way, what caused the Flint water crisis, it was a privatization scheme, as I've explained hundreds of times. It's killing people. So I totally agree with you, Dashboard Flies. And by the way, keep those super chats coming. We need you. I don't know how many people are watching. I'm sure it's not a lot. But this is expensive reporting. And if you could donate even a little bit, even if it's $2, $5, for those big wigs that can leave $50, $100, we really need you because this is very expensive to be on the road for 2 straight weeks. Flint, Kalamazoo, like I said, Lewis is going back to East Palestine next week for his 3rd reporting trip in 3 months. Colin's going there too. It's expensive. Between all 3 cities in 2 weeks, what do you say? Probably like $6 or $7 grand it'll cost us?
At least, yeah.
Between the flights, the hotels, rent a car, food. We actually need to go buy new batteries because one of our batteries is fucked up. So any amount you can contribute, because there is a lot of outlets asking you to sign up to their Patreon and Super Chats and all that. And they are sitting very comfortably in their studios. And I love a lot of them, but it's more expensive, a lot more expensive to do what we do than what they're doing. So please contribute any amount. We really appreciate it. And yeah, if you can, if you say, Jordan, what do you prefer, a donation or to sign up as a Status Coup member? That is what we prefer. Sign up as a Status Coup member for $5 to $10 a month, because that is how we grow, keep growing for the long term. Thanks to Lewis's great reporting in East Palestine, we added like 120 new paid members per month. But if we can keep adding a good amount of new paid members every on-the-ground reporting trip, it makes it a lot easier when you have that consistent amount of revenue coming in every month to then afford X amount of reporting trips, or to pay freelance reporters like Lewis, who we pay, for all his reporting. To pay Tina, Ron, Kim, Colin, obviously, to buy new equipment, which we're trying to do right now. We're trying to buy a new live view, which is the broadcasting unit we use to go live when we're on the road. So any amount makes a huge difference. And by the way, we could talk about anything. We'll be live for another 20 minutes, maybe half hour. So if you want to talk about Bernie endorsing Biden, which I did a video on, if you want to talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about, it's open mic. So you could leave super chats with questions, comments. If you want more information on Kalamazoo, what we're going to cover, let us know.
Linda Weston had said, I had friends that worked at the GM plant there, and when they closed, they stayed for a few years, and then they left. And when they left, they told me that the water was bad, and this has been a long time.
Yep. Because you got to remember, if maybe you don't know this, but forget for a second that they royally messed up, and when they switched the city of Flint to the Flint River, they didn't add the proper chemicals to make sure lead wasn't leaching into the pipe, leaching off the pipes into the water. Most residents, if you ask them, would you be okay drinking water from the Flint River? They would say, are you out of your fucking mind? The Flint River was basically a sewer in Flint. General Motors, DuPont, a whole lot of other industries had dumped its waste into the Flint River. We're talking dating back to the 1800s. There were literally dead bodies that would float up in the Flint River. GM, DuPont, you had waste from fracking dumped in the Flint River. All sorts of chemicals and contaminants, animal agriculture, waste from that. So the Flint River was one of the most polluted waterways, definitely in Michigan. So it was always going to be harder if you're switching to the Flint River to chemically treat that water to make it safe for people to drink. So even before the Flint River switch, I mean, that's why they didn't use the Flint River in Flint as a water source. That's why they got their water from Detroit. And remember, Michigan is part of the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes serves 1/5 of America's water globally. So I think the Great Lakes distributes, I think it's 20% of the world's water, because it's some of the most pure glacial water. And that's right on Flint's doorstep. So yeah, the Flint River, they should have never, ever used the Flint River. And by the way, in 2011, before they made the switch to the Flint River, there was a study done by an engineering company that said if Flint was ever going to try and use the Flint River as a water source, there would need to be a minimum of $61 million in upgrades to the Flint water plant, because obviously water is treated at water plants. The Flint water plant had not been used as a full-time water plant in decades. It was always a backup source in case Detroit's water, for whatever reason, there was a problem there. So it was told to the state government and the city government that you got to put in at least $61 million in upgrades and new equipment and new systems to the water plant for the water plant to be able to even chemically treat the Flint River water. Take it from me, when they switched to the Flint River, it was nowhere near $61 million of upgrades made. So essentially, using that plant to treat the Flint River water would be the equivalent of getting on a plane where one of the wings is like shaking and taking off. So yeah.
Michael Cooper had asked, is it true that the DNC doesn't want any debates in the 24 primary?
I do not have the DNC on speed dial, but from the reports I have read, the DNC is saying they're not going to have a primary, and they're not going to have any debates, which, I don't know, call me old-fashioned, seems pretty undemocratic. But what would you expect from the DNC? So, yeah, they are totally, this time, they're not even hiding it. They're totally throwing their whole goddamn body on the scale. They are, from what I have read, they are saying there's not going to be primary debates, even though you have two declared candidates, Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. Despite what I think of RFK Jr., who I do not support, and I think it's pretty laughable when you see idiots and grifters now like Jimmy Dore doing, cheerleading for RFK. RFK, if you do basic research, has pushed really dangerous misinformation on vaccines, among other things, for years. So I personally would not support RFK. I don't care if he has done some other good things. I don't think you can separate somebody pushing really, really dangerous misinformation on vaccines, totally recklessly, based on complete bullshit, linking vaccines to autism, which is not true. With that said, that doesn't mean if he has enough support that he shouldn't at least be able to be on a debate stage if he has enough support. At the moment, I think a poll I just saw had him at 19%, which is kind of scary that there's that much support. I think part of it is because of the last name and the Kennedy mystique. The last poll I saw, Marianne Williamson was at 9%. That's a high enough threshold that she should certainly be on a debate stage, whether you personally support her or not. Most importantly, wouldn't you want the incumbent president, who is 80 years old and clearly is not at his best, wouldn't you want, if you are the Democratic Party, wouldn't you want him to have, even if you're in the tank for him, some practice debates to make sure that he is lucid enough to then debate, if he is going to win the nomination, debate Trump or DeSantis or whomever it is? You want to just not give him any challenge, so then when he actually has to debate in the general election, that he absolutely tanks? So, to answer your question, it seems that they are totally in the tank for Biden. It's completely undemocratic, and I think if they go through with it and they totally eliminate democracy and don't hold debates and don't cover Marianne Williamson or RFK Jr.'s campaign, perhaps others might jump in. I think the Democratic Party is probably going to lose more people than they already have, and might hand, at this point, the general election to Trump, who I think will be the nominee unless he's in prison.
Or real quick, Traverse Wolf said, but his other policies are good, Jordan, referring to RFK.
I don't care. I don't really think that, personally for me, this is not a policy. Like, being anti-vax across the board, that's not like a policy where you just say, all right, I don't like him on this, but I like him on this. As a progressive, which I am a progressive, I don't hide it, I think you should believe in science. I think you should believe in facts and data. I do not think you should push, everybody believes in some kind of conspiracy theories, I guess, but when you are someone who is pushing blatant conspiracy theories not founded in data or science or anything of truth, conspiracies that could lead people to die, conspiracies that could lead people to get sick, personally, I am not a person who would then say, just kind of separate that and be like, all right, but I like his talk against corporations, or I like his talk on the environment. He might talk very well on those things, but I am not. I mean, you could vote for whoever you want. I'm not going to tell people. I don't tell people who to or not vote for. If you want to support RFK, have at it. But me personally, I'm not going. I would not separate somebody recklessly pushing dangerous misinformation that could kill people. Yeah, I'm just not going to do that. And I've looked into him. I've read. I've listened to his interviews where he claims I'm not anti-vax. I'm just anti-bad vax. Well, if you're saying every single vaccine is dangerous, then you are anti-vax. I mean, you could put a spin on it. You could dress it up in different language. And by the way, there are a lot of idiots like Jimmy Dore, who I used to respect but I don't anymore, who don't do basic research, who, based on the people I have spoken with who used to work for him, is one of the most gullible, naive, stupid people they've ever met. This is people who have told me this, who have worked for him, who, again, does no research and is very susceptible to conspiracy theories, and then passes it off as fact and attacks anyone who criticizes these conspiracy theories as being for the establishment. There's a lot of dangerous people like him that are pushing this bullshit and propping up RFK people. But yeah, I'm not going to do that. And, I say vote for whoever you want, but if you ask me, if the choice is Biden or RFK or Marianne Williamson, personally, if you were going to vote in the Democratic primary, because a lot of people say, fuck it, I'm not voting in the Democratic primary and I'm not going to vote for a Democrat again, and that's fine. If you don't want to vote for any Democrat, that's your choice. But if you are going to vote in the Democratic primary, if it were me voting in the Democratic primary, I am not going to vote for RFK, and I'm not going to vote for Biden, and that would leave Marianne Williamson. That's how I feel personally. So,
Ohana had brought up. I just clicked a button. 1 second. Had brought this up in other live streams. Just starting this week, the city of Toledo, which I think is here in Ohio, or in Ohio, not here, is shutting off residents' water if they don't let the department and a third-party company in their home to install a meter. And it's called the Toledo Smart Water Meter Project, and just asking us to look into that.
If you can email us that information, that would be helpful, because I will forget. Email us at info@statuscoup.com. That's info@statuscoup.com. I'll definitely look into that, but shutting off your water because you won't sign on to a, quote, smart system sounds pretty messed up and highly questionable, so I will definitely look into that.
We got another super chat.
And just so you know, because we like to bring you with us on the road, I don't know if you can show it, but we have our first Jesus sign that we've seen in a while. So this one is Jesus, your only way to God. Jesus, your only way to God. 8383 for truth. So
Those are all over Texas.
I love seeing the Jesus signs when I'm driving on the road.
Those are like every 20 meters in Texas when you're driving. We got a super chat from Caitlin again. It said, Jordan, in your opinion, how can an average non-journalist person help? I've been shocked at the things going on and feel disgusted. I don't want to turn my head and ignore issues.
It's a great question. It's a great question, and it's not an easy one to answer. And thank you for the super chat. I really think that pretty much in every story that I've ever covered, whether it was Standing Rock or Flint, East Chicago, Indiana, and by the way, if the camera's shaking, it's because the roads are very messed up here. I think it's really important to organize. And I know that word is kind of overused sometimes, but what I mean by organize is a lot of times people in communities don't organize, meaning don't form groups, don't hold meetings with one another, don't establish networks for certain issues or causes until there's a crisis. But you don't need to wait for a train to explode in your community or your water to be poisoned. There's crises everywhere. The crisis of corruption, the crisis of inflation, the crisis of housing prices going up, the crisis of rental prices going up. So I would say, if there is organizations in your city or town already, whether it's mutual aid organizations, whether it's water distribution organizations, whether it is climate organizations fighting for climate change, do something about climate change, whether it is tenants unions that are fighting evictions, whatever it is, you'd be surprised. Even in some small towns, you'll always find one or two groups that go to city council meetings. Join those organizations. If there are not those organizations, try and set it up yourself. Even if it seems overwhelming. Even if you could only set it up where it's just you and a couple of your friends. If it starts with 5 people going to city council meetings and getting up on the microphone and demanding answers for certain things, those 5 people might upgrade then and increase to 15. And then 15 jumps to 50. And before you know it, you have an organizing group in your community of a couple hundred people. If you show up to city council, if you show up to the mayor's office, if you show up to the head of the water departments, if you show up to the water plant, if you show up to the whatever it is in your town or city, and you demand answers and you protest, and you get enough people to refuse to pay your water bill or this bill until certain things are done, all of a sudden, the more numbers you get, then the media starts to cover it. So that's my best advice. I think people need to organize. I also think people need to realize that when you organize, there will always be attempts to divide and conquer. That is what happened in Standing Rock. That is what has happened in Flint and many other places. Government, corporations will literally identify certain people and pay them off and ask them to kind of sow division and push misinformation within activist groups and organizing networks to try and create division between activists, create drama. I would always be clear and make clear, you do not have to be best pals with the people you organize with. Frankly, you don't even need to like them. You can disagree on strategy from time to time. But the most important thing in organizing is to stick together, because the first thing that they will try to do is divide you. And when they, meaning the government, corporate America, when they are successful in dividing you, and the people of East Palestine can tell you, there's already been efforts to divide the activists, divide the residents, get them fighting with each other rather than fighting Norfolk Southern, the rail company, rather than fighting the EPA, who's feeding them a bunch of bullshit. So don't fight with each other. And to be clear, you're not always going to agree with one another. You're not always going to have the same strategy, but there are strength in numbers. So that's my best advice. DID had real quick said, thanks for all you do, and that they had just donated via PayPal, which, yes, we have. If you look in the description of this video and just scroll down the description, we have other ways to donate besides, super chats and the main one, which is StatusCoup.com/donate. But if you use PayPal, paypal.me/StatusCoup is in the description, as well as CashApp, and I think something else. So if you're like in one of those systems already and don't want to
take the effort for something else, you can do a quick donation there as well. So thank you.
And Colin, you can tell the people, because it happens every single trip. I will say to Colin, Jesus fucking Christ, man, we're screwed. We're not getting any donations. Even the ones we're getting, it's pretty small. I see the hotel bill, I see the rent-a-car bill, the flights. We're gonna lose a shit ton of money on this trip. And obviously we are a business. We need to at least try and break even on these trips, because if you keep spending a shit ton more money than you're bringing in, the lights will go out and we won't be able to do this. And it's like clockwork. Most of the time, like later in the trip, I'll be really like anxious about it and worried about it because we're not getting enough donations to like at least cover some of the expenses. And all of a sudden, like somebody will donate $500. Or in some cases where I've like done naked jumping jacks, you'll get like $1,000 donation from some amazing viewer. And it's just totally like, it's like I'm not religious, but it's almost like there is a God, because that takes a huge rock off my shoulder, knowing that, all right, at least we're kind of getting closer to breaking even. Obviously, we'd love to grow and make more money than we're spending. And in some trips where we are, getting member signups, we've been able to do that. And I would look at my phone, because maybe more people have signed up since we've been live, but, I'm driving, so I don't want to look at my phone. But obviously we know most people can't donate huge amounts, so any amount makes a difference. But in advance, we thank those few people who in the past have, or for this trip will, for those people who have donated a couple hundred or 500 or whatever, thank you, because we definitely, obviously we need to make some money on these trips to be able to continue. So statuscoup.com/donate, like Colin said. And if you are not a member, please sign up, because frankly, I've been doing this between the Young Turks and now Status Coup. I've been doing this for on the road almost 8 years, and I'll tell you, it's unfortunate, but there are very few independent outlets that are truly independent and do not take money from corporate America, the banks, the fossil fuel companies, big pharma, real estate, Silicon Valley, the military-industrial complex, the big donors that buy off the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. There are very few, like I can maybe count 3 or 4 that, actually no, I can't count 3 or 4, that go on the road constantly, cover stories that have long been abandoned by the rest of the media or were never covered in the first place, and do it independently and are funded by the viewers. And most of the time when we go on the road, there is no other national media covering the stories we're covering, and there's not even local media covering it. So it is so important and very much appreciated when you donate or when you sign up as a member.
Got another super chat from Humorous, and he actually said after this he tried 6 times to send the super chat, and it finally sent when he removed the word white. So you can guess where the word white goes. He says, when enough people are affected by austerity that they themselves had created, then there will be change. Until then, keep trying to spout knowledge.
Thank you so much, Humorous. If you don't mind me saying, Humorous has been one of those extremely generous people from time to time, and it keeps us going. I mean, I know from reading your super chats and emails that you are an extremely cynical person and have lost hope, which I understand, but I just hope you know how much we appreciate and really depend on people like you to keep us going. I kind of consider us just like, I just consider us the people's journalism, really. I just consider what I do and what Lewis is doing and Colin and Tina, who has been on the ground for us. I consider this the people's journalism, because if it's not us, who do you think is going to cover Flint? No one. If not us, who is going to go to Kalamazoo and cover what's going on there? You see in East Palestine, other than that week that the national media was there, no other outlets have even bothered to go back. Lewis is about to go on his third trip. And to be clear, these kind of reports, these stories are not the ones that make us a lot of money. We would make a shit ton more money actually not traveling, not covering these stories on the ground, and just like doing basic like sensationalized reactionary bullshit on YouTube like everybody else does. That's where the money is, particularly on YouTube. Just conflict, sensationalism, fighting other YouTubers, being as outlandish and sensationalized as you can, making thumbnails and headlines that are total clickbait. That's where the money is on YouTube. And we don't do that. We do not do that. So thank you, humorous. And yes, to your point, as is human nature in America, in the United Corporations of America, most of the time, the upper middle class and wealthy do not give a flying fuck until it affects them. Both Republicans and your suburban neoliberal wine moms. So I agree with you on that point, on austerity.
And Big Dumb Animal had just donated $25 on StatusCoup.com/donate.
Let's go! Thank you, Big Dumb Animal, for the $25 donation.
Traverse Wolf says Jordan has that Tom Cruise vibe.
Well, I'm not.
That's because of the aviators.
Oh, I'm not into Scientology, but hey, Tom Cruise is a good-looking fella. So thank you.
He does a lot of running.
That's true. Didn't he, one time jump on, he was on Oprah and jumped on a bunch of couches and shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was when I was growing up when that happened.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's anything else here. Caught up on everything, it looks like.
All right. Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, we're going to be live again around 5 o'clock Eastern. We're going to be interviewing residents in Kalamazoo who have been really on the front lines fighting this toxic gas being polluted into their air from graphic packaging, which is a massive paper mill in Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo has a really, really high percentage of respiratory issues, asthma, bronchitis, these kind of things, because of this toxic gas that is being pumped in. We did a video a few weeks ago where we posted video one resident took where you could see the gas in the middle of the night, pitch black. It's like this dark plume and she's coughing up her lungs. How is this happening in pure Michigan? How is the Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, allowing this? Worse, why is the Democratic governor and her administration, why did they approve 2 years ago a $125 million bond deal that gave Graphic Packaging, the company that is poisoning Kalamazoo, $125 million to expand operations in Kalamazoo? And why is the media not covering this? Do the journalists have to inhale the toxic gas to care? Does it have to come for their kids? So that's what we're going to be covering. We'll be live again at 5 o'clock Eastern. If anything breaks. Other than that, like I said, I did a video yesterday on Bernie Sanders endorsing Joe Biden and getting absolutely nothing for it, which I think was really fucking pathetic, if you ask me. And Lewis is currently working on some follow-up investigations when it comes to East Palestine. So we're doing a lot, not with a lot of resources, trying to cover as much ground as we can. So yeah, definitely make sure you come back around 5 o'clock for the live stream tonight. We'll be live, I'm not positive, but I think it'll be right near the plant that's poisoning the community. So I'm looking forward to be able to showing you that.
We just got another super chat from Humorous for $20. Says, yes, I've become a mean, cynical old man because all my life I tried to teach people to help each other and I accomplished nothing. But when broke doing it, I believe in truth no matter where it comes from.
First of all, we need more cynical, mean old men. Secondly, it's not true that you have accomplished nothing, because in some cases you are the reason that we were able to afford certain trips. So you have not accomplished nothing. You have helped fund this. And I'm sure you have accomplished other things as well. But it's okay to be a mean old man as long as you don't hurt anybody. We need people... Excuse me. We need people to get pissed off. We need people to get angry. Because it's not okay what's being done to the people of Flint or Kalamazoo or East Palestine or Indiana, where the plastics plant just exploded and a lot of people got sick there from that fire, and the EPA told them, oh, everything's fine after a few days after that inferno in Indiana. And you should also be mad at the media, who is helping to cover all of this up. The mainstream corporate media, the local corporate media, is hiding all of this from you. So they are a major part of the problem. And I have always said it's cool to go out and protest outside of corporations. It's great to go out and protest outside the White House, protest outside the Capitol. Don't storm it, but protest. But we need to start seeing some people protesting outside your local news outlets and your national news outlets, and demanding that they start covering what matters, because they are not. They are not covering what matters at all.
And another super chat from Caitlin again for $5. I think we need a new moral majority. If everyone who cares came together, we would have so much more strength.
I like that. I like that. Thank you, Caitlin. Totally agree. Totally agree. Wow, these roads. Gretchen Whitmer promised to fix the damn roads, but they are not fixed. If you saw the roads right now and the bumps on these roads, Jesus, it is really something. Really something, these roads headed to Kalamazoo. They are very bumpy and really need to be redone. But, you know, we got $2 billion, $3 billion, $4 billion, however much we're giving to Ukraine every week. But we can't fix America's roads. We can't change the contaminated pipes in America. We can't give health care to all Americans, but we could give billions and billions of dollars to every other country but America. So yes. Last call before we end the live stream, please. Every donation is appreciated. Every super chat is appreciated. Every new member sign up. I have to assume, however many people are watching, that there's got to be some that are not Status Coup members yet. And if you are not a Status Coup member yet, let me break it down for you. You could sign up as a Status Coup member for $5 a month. That equals 16 cents a day. Now, some people don't even have $5 a month or the 16 cents a day. But most people, if you think about it, what you might spend $5 on a day or a month, it's not something you 100% need. I always say, like, do you really need that $6 Frappuccino from Starbucks? Or that $5, I don't know, chalupa from Taco Bell, or whatever the hell it is? Can you give that up one day or 1 week and send it to Status Coup? Because it's really that simple. If you really went down your expenses and thought about what you spend $5 a month on, or $10 a month, because you could also become a member at $10 a month. We have $20 per month plans.
Or you can set up a recurring donation at any amount between $1 and as high as you want. Whether you can recur it monthly, every 3 months, every year, whatever time frame you want.
Very, very good information there. And that you could do at statuscoup.com/donate, right?
Yeah.
So you could do a recurring donation. But for most people, if you really think about it, there is something you're spending $5 or $10 on a month that you might not even remember you're spending $5 to $10 on a month, that you definitely don't need to spend $5 to $10 a month on. Just redistribute it to Status Coup, and we will make good with that money, because we will use it to travel and cover stories, to get the equipment we need, to pay for hotels, rent a car, all that. So if it's not possible, if you really don't have any room at all for $5, $10 a month, or if you're spending $5, $10 a month on supporting other media that are not covering any of this shit, I say take your money and give it to us. So I hope once I stop driving and I can look at my phone, I really, really hope to see some of you have signed up as members. You could also, if you are a current member, there also is the option of increasing the amount you support us. So sometimes we see people upgrading from $5 a month to $10 a month. Sometimes we see people have signed up at the free level, which really just gives us your email. Sometimes people who have signed up as a free member upgrade to $5. So there's a lot of different options, so we appreciate it all.
We got super chat from Dashbush Flies for $5.99. Again, the establishment is so disgusting that it infuriates me as a non-American.
Well, there is an establishment across the pond, too, that I find infuriating, where you are. But absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, Dashbush Flies, and thank you so much for the super chat, our country has been sold. Our government has been sold to corporations, wealthy, mostly white people, to oil executives, to pharmaceutical executives, to tech executives, to Wall Street executives, and really it's just one big Broadway play. It's all theater. Your government is fooling you. It's all a show. They're not representing you. They are endangering your lives. They are endangering your children's lives. And every 4 years, and every 2 years for the midterms, we have this game of theater that gives it the appearance of a democracy. I'm not telling people not to vote. I do think voting is important. But we're not going to get ourselves out of this fucking mess just by voting. That is for sure. So, absolutely.
Another super chat from Z Core Alpha for $4.99. Trump or Biden won't be president, will be someone unexpected.
Thank you for the super chat. Who do you think? I mean, listen, I'll say this. I am not a doctor, but clearly anyone who has eyes can tell that Joe Biden, whether it just be through old age or he has the early stages of something, is not at his best. We'll leave it at that. And I mean, he has already said, and his people have already said, that he's basically not going to campaign. His campaign will just be being president. And I think that is because they know he cannot physically or mentally handle a presidential campaign. It's not a coincidence that they do not really put him out for many speeches, like at night. It's not a coincidence that this president has given the least amount of interviews to the media than any other president before him. It's not a coincidence that he has done the least amount of press conferences than any other president before him. There's been some video where it looks like he needs help just knowing where he's going. So it is possible that Biden would not, I don't mean make it like he's going to die, but just not make it to run. I think they're trying to do whatever they can to make sure he is able to make it, because I think they are very, very well aware that Vice President Harris is not popular. I don't even think she's that popular among Democrats, and that she would very likely lose to Trump or DeSantis. they also know that they have kind of created this identity politics monster, the Democratic Party. So they can't really, if Biden is not able to do it, they can't really get rid of her because they've created identity politics monsters. And I think black Americans, for good reason, would not find that acceptable for them to abandon the first black female vice president. So I do think it's possible that Biden would not make it to the general election. Trump, I think in terms of all of his legal jeopardy, the actual case that has the highest chance of actually, I definitely think is going to be charged for this, and actually convicting him is the classified documents case, because it's just very black and white. There's not a lot of ambiguity. He kept the documents. He ignored subpoenas. He, from the evidence, personally went through the boxes and took certain things out and handed back certain classified documents, but kept others. He apparently directed people who worked for him to move some of the classified documents when they were supposed to return all of it. And we know in American history, when you piss off the CIA, the FBI, generally you end up dead. You could ask JFK or Julian Assange. So I think Trump is going to win the nomination for the Republican Party. And I think the only situation where he would drop out is if he is charged with one of these things and he knows it is highly likely he's going to be convicted. I think Trump would bow out if a deal was presented where he could make a deal with the government that if I drop out and I never run again, then I'll get some slap on the wrist like probation or house arrest or something like that.
Just got another super chat from Humorous for $100.
Humorous! That's what I'm talking about, baby! Thank you so much, Humorous. It's very, very much appreciated.
There was a president once that instilled a great deal of antitrust laws against the United Corporations. No one uses those laws anymore. Instead, we get down on our knees and beg for more money when money is a useless product only to keep track of what we need.
And you know why those laws are not enforced, Humorous? Because Amazon and all of these companies that have become monopolies in the United Corporations of America have bought off the government that's supposed to be applying the antitrust laws. How about that? So you are correct. You are 100% correct. If we just enforce the antitrust laws that are already on the books, we would have a much, much more just society. We'd have a lot more economic equality. It's not to say that there wouldn't be a gap, but things would be a lot better if we actually had real competition. I mean, I'm a socialist. I'm anti-capitalist. But if we're going to have a capitalist country, at least have it where you actually have real competition and you have real choices, not Amazon and all these corporate fucking criminals rigging the whole system. So yes, and thank you so much, Humorous. We really, really appreciate all of your contributions over the years. It really helps us to continue doing this, so thank you.
We also got a new member, Riley.
Hey, Riley! New member. Riley signed up. Thank you, Riley. By the way, I should have said, when you sign up as a Status Coup member, you're not just supporting us, but you do get perks. So as a member, you get access to our monthly members call, which we do through Zoom. We're probably going to do that when Colin is back, and I'm back, and Lewis is back from this reporting trip. And by the way, I'm not texting. I'm just looking directions where I'm going. So you get access to our monthly Zoom call, which is a lot of fun. We usually go for an hour or two and answer your questions, comments. You get access to our members-only Discord channel, which is cool. And you also get behind-the-scenes videos that we shoot when we're on the road for members that we post on our member site, which is StatusCoupMember.com.
We also got a $5 website donation from Elisa.
Thank you, Elisa.
She left a little comment that said, not understanding how David Pacman has a million followers. He is a commentator with bells and whistles. Status Coup family does far greater work and purpose driven than any other journalist. If I ever become a millionaire, I'm definitely donating a big amount to you guys.
From your lips, if there is a God's ear. I gotta tell you, I have no fucking idea how people like David Pacman have the audience he had. Technically speaking, people like David Pacman, their channels existed long before YouTube changed its algorithm. For those of you that don't know, YouTube changed its algorithm in 2017 to basically hide independent media and to basically throttle work like this. When I was at the Young Turks in 2016, these kind of trips that I took, we would get a shit ton more viewers. I mean, I went live sometimes from Flint. We would have like 1,000 live viewers. But when YouTube changed its algorithm, it basically, we stopped showing up in people's feeds. Even people who subscribe to us, we stopped showing up as much. We were not recommended. Because YouTube works on recommendations, where YouTube recommends videos and channels to you. That stopped after YouTube changes algorithms. So in the past, if we would get 5, 6, 7,000 views on a video, we would get 700 views on a video. In the past, if we got 700 to 1,000 live viewers, all of a sudden we were getting 200 live viewers for the same exact type of reporting. So did people suddenly just stop caring? Or did people just suddenly stop seeing it? I think we know the answer. But, you know, there's some commentators that sit in a studio that I like and listen to, and I get it why they have an audience, but I know for a fact, because I've done it before, if YouTube's algorithm was fair and it just existed as any channel or any host had the ability to be seen on an equal playing field, and YouTube wasn't pumping certain kind of content or certain channels into people's feeds more than others, I know for a fact we would have exploded a long time ago, because there is a huge hunger out there for real, specifically on-the-ground journalism on these kind of stories. The problem is most people do not know Status Coup exists. I haven't figured out how to change that, but if you do become a millionaire, please throw a couple 100,000 our way. Thank you.
Got a $5 super chat from Humorous. How about this? The year that Jeff Bezos was caught only paying $500 in taxes, I paid $26,000. How is that fair?
Not only is it not fair, it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. Jeff Bezos, in my view, is a criminal. Just for the union busting. But yeah, I mean, make it make sense. It does not make sense why generally low income, middle class, or poor people are paying 30%, 40% of their income on taxes, but a fucking multi-billionaire is paying $500. That can only happen if your system is corrupt and if your government has basically shifted from working for you, the people, to working for Jeff Bezos. And that's who they work for. By the way, Chuck Schumer, he gets the most money from Facebook. His daughter works at Facebook, or used to work at Facebook. I think other members of his family worked at Facebook. What do you know? Chuck Schumer gets a lot of money from Facebook and doesn't push antitrust legislation as the leader of the Senate. Go figure.
We're all caught up.
All right, we're going to wrap up because we're almost there and I need to stop to get coffee or something to wake me up. We will be live again at around 5 o'clock Eastern time. from Kalamazoo. We're going to be interviewing residents about graphic packaging who's been releasing toxic gas into the community for years. Hopefully we'll show you the gas. I will be wearing a mask if we are near this plant, because I don't need to be inhaling that shit, and residents shouldn't be inhaling that shit. So definitely come back around 5 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you are signed up to our Substack too. That's StatusCoup.substack.com. You want to make sure you're signed up to our Substack, because we usually post on our Substack right before we go live, and you'll get an email. If you sign up to our Substack, you'll get an email notification when we're going live. You can sign up to our Substack for free also. There is a paid option too, but you can also sign up for free. So that's StatusCoup.substack.com. And please, once again, if you're not a Status Coup member, really think about it. Just take a look. If you have a budget or anything, take a look at what you're spending, $5 or $10 a day or a month. And if there's something you're spending it on that you don't really need, ask yourself, do you feel that what we're doing is valuable enough that you could reallocate that $5 or that $10 to us? I hope the answer is yes. And if it is, StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. We'll see you back here live around 5 o'clock Eastern. Thanks for watching, and thank you so much for the super chats and the donations. We'll see you soon.